and guests. Today, I would like to welcome you to a presentation dedicated to honor our veterans. On behalf of the Como-Pickton FFA, we thank each and every one of our veterans for your service to our great nation.
As you know, one of the aims and purposes of the FFA is to develop character, train for useful citizenship, and foster patriotism. At this time, we will have the presentation of the flags. Would everyone please stand? As we look at the flag of the United States of America, we should think of our great country, its history, and the principles for which America stands. The flag not only represents the nation, but every person in it that is entitled to liberty, justice, and equality of opportunity. FFA members should do their part in keeping the flag the emblem of the free people.
I am the flag of the United States of America. I am whatever you make me, nothing more. I am your belief in yourself, your dream of what people may become. I live a challenging life, a life of moods and passions, of heartbreak and tired muscles. Sometimes I droop, when the purpose is gone from me, and cynically I play the coward. But always, I am all you hope to be and have the courage to try for it. I am song and fear, struggle and panic, and enabling hope. I am the day's work of the weakest man, and the largest dream of the most daring. I am the farmer, the lawyer, doctor, cook, counselor, and clerk. I am the battle of yesterday and the mistake of tomorrow. I am mystery of men who do without knowing why. I am the clutch of an idea and the reason, purpose, or resolution. I am no more than what you believe me to be and all that you believe that I can be. I am what you made me, nothing more. I wave before your eyes as a bright gleam of color, a symbol of yourself, the pictured suggestion of that big thing which make a nation. My stars and stripes are your dream and your labors. They are bright with color, brilliant with courage, and firm with faith, because you have made them out to be your hearts. And as long as men cherish liberty more than life itself, I shall continue to be the enduring banner for the United States of America.
As Texans, we are extremely proud of the flag of the Lone Star State. We, the Texas FFA, have deep gratitude in our hearts for the many contributions made by our citizens, which have made our state the great state it is today. The Texas FFA is symbolic of life and the many golden opportunities offered by our great state.
I am the flag of the great Lone Star State of Texas. When Texans look upon me, names such as Austin, Houston, Travis, Fannin, Bowie, and Crockett flash through their memories. They think of the landmarks of Texas liberty, Goliad, San Jacinto, and the Alamo. I represent grazing cattle, fruit-laden orchards, fields of grain, and brightly painted barns. It was me that Colonel Fannin was speaking of when he said, "Give us a flag for which we can fight and hoist up in defiance of Santa Anna." My vertical line of blue stands for the loyalty in the heart of all Texans. My horizontal stripe of white stands for the purity in the heart of all Texans. My horizontal stripe of red represents the blood that has been shed by Texans everywhere in the name of freedom and liberty. A star has always been a symbol of dominion and sovereignty, and it is only proper that I should bear a star as a symbol of the Lone Star State of Texas. I represent many things to many people. I can be all that you make me, nothing more. And as long as men cherish liberty and freedom, I shall continue to fly proudly over the free state of Texas.
The War Eagle Band will now play the national anthem. Today, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Alan Folsom. Mr. Folsom joined the United States Air Force in 1985. During his time in the Air Force, Folsom was an independent duty medical technician and combat medic. He learned advanced medical training, combat and trauma medicine, emergency patient airlift and helicopters, and tactical aircraft. Folsom joined the Air Force because of a long family history of military. On his dad's side, military is dated back as far as the Civil War, and his mom's side as far back as the Revolutionary War. Folsom has traveled to Iraq, Afghanistan, Turkey, Korea, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Yemen, Egypt, Germany, England, Iceland, and Grenada. Folsom decided to become a teacher during his last 10 years serving because he thought he taught medics and decided that's what he was passionate about. Mr. Folsom retired from the Air Force in 2015 as a Master Sergeant. Please welcome Mr. Alan Folsom.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is so wonderful to be here with you. It is indeed an honor to speak with you today. Before I get started, though, I have a couple of people I would like to thank. First and foremost, I would like to thank my dear friend, Austin Baxley, that most of you know. It is at Mr. Baxley's insistence that this old retired vet came here to interview, and I got the job as a teacher here, and I've been exceptionally pleased with that ever since. Can we give Mr. Baxley a round of applause? Another person I would like to thank is my principal, Kelly Baird. He is not only a man of high character and integrity, but he is a wonderful mentor, and he is an exceptional friend to me. And I could not be the teacher that I am without his guidance and his leadership. Can we give it up for Mr. Baird, please? The last group of people I would like to thank, if I could please, and I'd like to ask that you do this. I'd like all of my students, both 10th and 12th grade, to please stand. That includes you, Maverick. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the future of this great state, this great town, this great country, and I am honored to be their teacher. It is a privilege that I get up every day and I motivate myself to come here and set the example that I set, and to mentor these people and to do the job well so that they will look at me and that they will know that there is a future for this country. I thank you so much for allowing me the privilege of being your teacher. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Okay, today we are going to talk about a life of service. And I asked one of my students here last week, what am I going to talk about? And he told me, he said, Mr. Folsom, just tell them about what you do every day. Tell them about what you did. And I thought, that makes a lot of sense. I guess I should just talk about my experience as a veteran. Next slide, please. So I want to start with the veteran's creed. Every veteran has a creed, and it involves the word duty, honor, and country. Next slide, please. Duty. Duty is defined as an obligatory task, conduct, service, or functions that arise from one's position, as in life or in a group, such as the military. Next slide, please. Honor. Honor details one's word, given as a guarantee of performance or a deed of trust, a keen sense of ethical conduct, integrity. Next slide, please. Country. The land of a person's birth, residence, or citizenship. Next slide, please. I joined the military out of a sense of duty. Growing up as a young man, it was instilled in me that whatever I did in life, I would have to serve my country first and foremost. My father was a World War II veteran who fought in the Marine Corps in the South Pacific, and he was my hero. I looked up to him. I admired him. But he was a man that was damaged by war. And so, truthfully, when I was a teenager, I wanted very much to get away. And I knew that I had to mature, and the military was the best route for that. Next slide, please. So I joined the military, And the military life for me was a constant struggle because I was not perfect. But you don't have to be perfect in the military. All you have to do is just keep showing up every day with the right attitude, just like you do here. Just like I try and encourage my students, show up every day with the right attitude. Take the steps you have to take. Walk the walk. That's 90% of the battle. But in the military, all we did was train. Next slide. And we trained. Next slide. And we trained. Next slide. And we trained some more. Next slide, please. And eventually, you wind up in a position of leadership where you are not only training, but you're the trainer. And this is where I found my passion for teaching. I found my passion for teaching when I was instructing young Americans not much older than you who were getting ready to go off to combat and getting ready to go fight. Next slide, please. Then one day the training comes to an end and it's time to perform. And I found myself after 9/11 going to Iraq on the initial phase of the invasion and doing my job. Next slide, please. The days were long, the days were hard, but I remembered my task, which was to just simply keep showing up every day. And a friend of mine, when I was down in the dumps one day, after an especially hard battle, looked at me and said, "Hey, Folsom, you know what I do? I simply look at that spot on the pavement and I move towards it. And then I look at the next spot on the pavement and I move towards it. And before I know, I've got another day done and another day complete." And eventually your life evolves into that in combat. You just simply keep showing up and you keep doing your job. You don't really worry about what might happen to you, but you do worry about what might happen to your family if you're gone. Fortunately for me, I never had that problem. Next slide, please. But you want to do your job, and you want to do your job well, because people's lives are depending on it. That's why I want to do my job well here, because I know you are depending on me. That's what motivates me to come here every morning. Next slide, please. You go to places where humanity is somewhat subjective. The humanity that we see here in America is something that we often take for granted. I've seen places where human life is very cheap. And I will say this much, you never know what a great country we have until you go to those places where life is very cheap, and then you realize that all of the things that we complain about here are very trivial, and you realize what a great country we have. Next slide, please. You go to places where you feel quite small. This is in Afghanistan at Bagram Air Base, a forward air base that I was stationed at. And that was my view that I woke up to every morning. And it was cold, but it was very chilling, very haunting though. I was very proud to serve my country and I was proud to be there. Next slide, please. There are dangerous moments. I won't regale you with any because they're really trivial. I made it back. That's the only thing you really need to know. But like I said, you focus on the mission. Next slide, please. But life, regardless of the death and the destruction that surrounds you, goes on. And you see God's presence all around you, even in the midst of war. Next slide, please. Of course, there are times when life becomes very difficult and life becomes very challenging when you're doing your job. Next slide, please. There are downtimes and downtimes that make you think of the life that you have here, and you miss it, and you miss your family. And you do what you can to remember those times and learn not to take them for granted when you get back to them. Next slide, please. There are colleagues and comrades that you develop lifelong friendships with. Next slide, please. And you see things that make you wonder if you're in the present or the past. Next slide, please. Of course, there's always the job, always returning to duty, returning to the mission. That is the system that you operate under as a veteran. The mission the lives come first. Next slide, please. The colleagues, the friends that you make are lifelong friends. Next slide, please. And then, one day, it all comes to a close. 30 years have passed, and you're standing before those same colleagues, and you're telling them goodbye. Only to have a new set of colleagues and a new set of challenges. Next slide, please. But the memories remain. And here last week, one of my students told me, Mr. Folsom, tell them a great story. They'll like that. And I wondered, what am I going to say? And so I want to share a story with you, a story that's very personal to me that I have not told many people other than Mr. Baxley, who is my good friend. He knows this story, but you don't. That young man right there is named Ryan J. Cummings. And I met Ryan on June 3rd, 2006. He was in a Humvee that was in Anbar province in Iraq, and he was with 4 other Marines. They ran into an IED which exploded and sent shrapnel into that Humvee, killing 2 of the 3 Marines in the 2 of the 4 Marines in the Humvee instantly, wounding another and mortally wounding Ryan. A 9-line was established in country, and being attached to the Army as an IDMT, I flew with the helicopter to pick Ryan up and get him back to advanced medical care, potentially save his life. When we landed and Ryan was placed on the chopper, he was still alive, and he looked at me. And the look of trust that he had in his eyes was very humbling to me. It made me want to fight as hard as I could to save his life and get him home. In the 15-minute trip that it took for the Black Hawk helicopter to get to Balad, he kept looking at me. I kept telling him, you're going to be okay. We're going to get you help. You're going to be okay. As I hooked him up to the monitor and I looked at him, I realized he was in grave condition and that he probably would not make it. He looked up at me and he held his hand out, and I grabbed his hand firmly. And I said, stay with me, fight. You're going to be okay. We landed at Balad, and I got him into the ER, and for some strange reason, I could not leave his side. I felt compelled to stay with him. And I stayed with him as we wheeled him into the ER, and I helped the medical crew assess him. The doctor came and looked at him and confirmed my worst suspicions, that he was going to die. I looked at him again, and he had already lost consciousness, but I reached down and I grabbed his hand and I squeezed it, and I felt him squeeze my hand, and then I felt him pass away. I knelt down by his head and I said the Lord's Prayer with him. And I asked him to accept Christ into his heart, and I told him that I would see him again one day in heaven. And then I kissed him on the forehead, and I went about my duty, because there was another casualty to pick up. And remember, the mission goes on. The intimacy of that moment stayed with me, and I could not shake it. It stayed with me, and it haunted my dreams. I got home in 2006, much to my family's delight, to my beautiful wife Julie, my adoring children. But that war stayed with me. And that pain of that moment, and several moments after that, stayed with me. I began drinking alcohol, way too much. I began getting angry. And the wife that I loved very deeply sat me down one day and looked at me and said, if you don't do something, I'm going to take the kids and I'm going to leave. So I was given a choice. I either do something about this problem, or I let this problem do me. And I wasn't going to let it affect my family and affect my life. Because you see, my mission had switched, and now it was about the mission. But the mission was my family. So the internet is a wonderful thing. I looked up Ryan's family, and within a minute or two, I was able to find his mother and his father in Streamwood, Illinois. And very nervously, I picked up the phone and I called his mother. And I got her on the phone. relayed that story that I just relayed to you, and she told me, thank you, in the midst of her tears. I felt like a complete jerk. I felt like I perhaps ripped open a wound that had started to heal. But both her husband and her said, thank you so much. Thank you. You don't know what you've done for us. And I asked her for clarification, and she told me that when Ryan was a little boy, that she used to take him to the doctor's office, and he used to be deathly afraid of the doctor. And she told me that he would reach out his hand and he would say, Mommy, please hold my hand. I'm so afraid. And so she told me that she could not keep him from going to Iraq. She told me that she could not keep him from joining the military and going overseas. But she told me that she prayed every day that if he were to fall, that there would be someone there to hold his hand. And she told me that she was so comforted knowing that there was someone there holding his hand as he went into eternity. My students often ask me if I was a hero, and they often want to know the heroic things that I've done. But I can honestly tell you, my friends, that act is the most heroic and most noble thing that I have ever done in my life. So in closing, I want to encourage you. Everyone here is affected by military service. There are relatives in your life, there are acquaintances. Do me a favor today. Call them. Tell them thank you. Tell them that you love them. And in closing, let me leave you with this. May the Lord bless you. May He keep you. May He cause His face to shine upon you. And may you always know that America is a great country. And as long as you have people stepping up to defend it, it will still remain a great country. Thank you so much for your time. God bless you all.
Mr. Baxley's avid student will now present 100 Years of Veterans Day.
Thank you. I think we need to give Mr. Folsom another round of applause. That was As we remember this day, it's important to not take veterans for granted. It's important that we take time to remember our history and all the things that have happened that have brought us to this day. Today, the APID class that I teach has put together a presentation. It's similar to the one before, but they've kind of revamped it. They've done a little bit more work to it, and they are here to present to you 102 years of Veterans Day.
In 1917, millions of U.S. soldiers walked into the cold, wet trenches of the First World War and fought to defend the democracies of the world from the tyranny of the Central Powers. Over 4.7 million Americans served in World War I. 11,000 were women and 400,000 were African Americans. After the war, 320,000 returned wounded or lost. These fierce men and women faced dangerous machinery such as grenades, mustard gas, tanks, along with many other new horrifying weapons of war. America and the Allies were victorious, and the fighting ended with an armistice on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918.
On November 11, 1918, the Allied nations and Germany signed an armistice ending the fighting in the Great War. The next year, Americans celebrated the anniversary of the end of the fighting as Armistice Day. On November 7, 1919, the New York Times wrote that Americans would be observing the day to celebrate the end of the fighting and the service of the soldiers in the war effort. Celebrations continued each following year, and therefore the day became known as Armistice Day.
In 1941, brave Americans answered the call to serve their country in the Second World War and defend the world from the attacks of the Axis powers. In 1945, World War II veteran Raymond Weeks
had an idea to expand Armistice Day to celebrate all veterans, not just those who died in World War I. In 1953, Alvin J. King proposed changing the name of the holiday to Veterans Day to recognize veterans from all wars and conflicts. U.S. Representative Edwards Reese of Kansas proposed a bill that would change that. In 1954, Congress passed the bill that President Eisenhower signed proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day.
After the victory of World War II, Americans celebrated veterans and the United States government, awarded generous benefits to veterans with the GI Bill. During the Cold War, American soldiers defended our country from the dangers of communism in foreign lands, and Americans supported the war efforts at first. However, when the United States sent soldiers to Vietnam during the 1960s and 1970s, many Americans began to oppose the war. Many people who opposed the war in Vietnam began to mistreat American soldiers who fought in the war. Vietnam veterans were raised in a society that honored veterans. However, they were treated horribly by civilians who disliked the war. Vietnam veterans were spat upon, called baby killers, and were discriminated against. Many veterans had to hide the fact that they served in the military.
Since the Vietnam War, the homecoming of veterans has changed. While the United States treated veterans horribly during the Vietnam War, in today's time, the veterans are welcomed home and treated with greater respect. People today take more time and effort to celebrate veterans' homecomings and honor our veterans no matter what war they fought in. While people may disagree with war, we celebrate veterans for their bravery and dedication to our country. Moving forward, we should always try to honor veterans and let them know just how grateful we are for their service. You can do this in little ways, just by saying thank you. There are so many other things people can and should do to honor veterans. There are 40,056 veterans who come home from war without a place to go, and they end up homeless. Veterans have a lot to deal with, and they are going through things you may not understand. So take the time to let them know you care and that you are thankful for them.
Veterans of the United States military today are a diverse group of brave men and women who have served their country. 4% of all veterans were from World War II, 8% served in the Korean War, 33% in the Vietnam War, 23% in the Gulf War, and 22% have served during the times of peace. 27% of veterans are under 50 years old, 29% are between 50 to 69 years of age, and 34% are 70 years of age or older. Men and women of all races have served in the United States military with distinction and bravery, and all deserve our gratitude and respect.
Without our veterans, we would not be the free country that we are today. They fought for us when we needed them most. Veterans are ordinary people who do extraordinary things. They are brave leaders. They help guide us every day to a greater future. They are kind people who decided to face the dangers of war head on and defended all of our freedom. Even when their military service ends, veterans continue to build and grow our nation. Veterans serve as leaders in our communities and businesses. Veterans work in diverse areas of our economy, and their efforts help our country to continue to thrive and grow. On Veterans Day, we honor those who have served the country in war and peace. The veterans fought for our freedoms and they risked their lives, whether or not we realized it or appreciated it. Without their service, we would not have our freedom that we have today. Veterans are noteworthy because they have left their families to fight for our country and our freedom. Veterans selflessly put all our needs before theirs. Veterans have done everything asked of them in their mission to serve our country, and it is never too late to give them a dearest welcome home. Whenever you see a veteran, you should tell them thank you for your service.
The projects displayed around the cafeteria are courtesy of Miss Carr's 6th grade ELAR students, Miss Evans' 7th grade ELAR students, and Miss Biggerstaff's 8th grade ELAR students.
At this time, I would like to point out that we have started a Veterans Wall, Honor Wall here at Como-Pickton. If you know someone who has graduated from Como-Pickton and has served or is currently serving in the military and you would like to honor them, please contact the superintendent's office. This year, each of our FFA officers chose a veteran that they would like to honor. At this time, we will speak about them and their service. On behalf of my family, the veteran I would like to introduce to you today is James Lewis Simmons. Born on April 2nd, 1926, he joined the United States Army shortly after his 17th birthday and had his brother sign for him. He completed only 6 weeks of basic training, then was immediately sent overseas. Him and hundreds of other young men boarded a train and were sent to frontline battles with German troops. He fought in Operation Plunder along the Rhine River and survived despite receiving shrapnel which he lived with his entire life. He rejoined the United States Army after his World War II tour, serving as a Corps of Engineers in Washington State. James Lewis Simmons is my great-grandfather, also known as our family's hero.
Camilio Hogan Perez is a hardworking man and loves his country with all his heart. His branch was the United States Marine Corps. For 4 years, Mr. Perez served his country for all of us. He was ranked Corporal E4. Camilio Perez worked in the supply warehouse where he did things like make sure everyone had clothes and bedding. He made sure that they had the supplies they needed in order to fight for their country. These men worked behind the scenes but impacted everyone. Thank you, Mr. Perez, for your service and all that you do for our country.
My dad, Hilton, a 42-year-old man, started his military career in 1997 at just 18 years old. He did his basic training, or AIT, in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. He was an E4 specialist. My dad has always been very passionate about cars or anything with an engine. He worked as a heavy-wheeled vehicle mechanic. He was assigned to Company D-27 NSC, or Main Support Battalion, in the 1st Cavalry Division in Fort Hood, Texas. He worked in motor pool, repairing military vehicles. I would like to thank my dad for doing his part in serving our country.
Misty Tibbs, a 30-year-old veteran, started the Army immediately after she graduated. She was 17. She was sent to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri on June 3, 1998. Then in August of 1998, she performed AIT training. There, they took her on many tours to see the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and a large tour of Washington, D.C., where she made some amazing memories. In October of 1998, she was directed to Fort Hood, Texas, where she was in active duty. She was first in HHC DISCOM 1st Cavalry Division. Then she became a property book officer at the DMMC. Thank you, Mrs. Tibbs.
My veteran's name is Mr. Darrell Spencer. Today, he is the Como-Pickton chemistry and physics teacher. He served the United States Navy from 1984 to 1990. Mr. Spencer entered the Navy as a surface warfare officer. He became a lieutenant in 1988. His day-to-day job was to manage a ship crew under his division based on the ship he was stationed on. While on the ship, he assigned his crew different tasks, trained members, and also maintained his own training. He was stationed in Mayport, Florida, and Charleston, South Carolina. While in the Navy, he got to visit countries like Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil. He was responsible for his crew being ready for war in a moment's notice. Now, he uses the knowledge that he learned in the Navy to teach our students at Como-Pickton today. Thank you, Mr. Spencer, for your service to our country. At this time, the War Eagle Band will honor our veterans by playing The Spirit of America.
pledge to the American flag. Everyone, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you, students, faculty, and guests for joining us today to honor the heroes that have fought for the United States of America.